Alrighty, Old Roller Nation. We got a little bit of a special treat today. Uh, Not that Mike's here. Mike is not special or a treat. The treat is that Michael and I had the chance to review the defensive BJJ site after the interview that I did with Preet Mickelson, and have gone through it for the last month and tried to really dig in deep and learn as much as we could about his systems and methodology. And we're gonna kind of present a what are you? You're a second degree black belt, correct? So a second degree black belt's perspective and a purple belt's perspective on defensive BJJ, and really crappy purple belt also. So
Agree.
like,
I'm not sure who promoted you, but that's questionable at best. That's all I
well,
know.
I was told that I'm the weakest purple belt of all the purple belts my instructor has ever given, which hurt my feelings. And then I looked at the purple belts and I was like, I don't feel as bad.
It's good you're spinning it for the positive.
so, uh, out of the gate, my thoughts just as I looked in the website was that it was so broad. There's so many interconnected but also different modules that I felt like within 30 days I wouldn't have the opportunity to really do a deep dive on a whole bunch of them. So I tried to drill it down a little bit for myself and say, what is something similar to things that I already do that then I can use to put directly into my game and get things about. And so I picked the baby bridge because a lot of my defensive strategies are based out of bridging. I feel like I have a pretty strong bridge, and so I wanted to expand my bridging game. And so I tried to do as deep of a dive on the modules of the baby bridge as I could. What was your take on the website as you entered it?
So one thing, there was just a little bit with the navigation. Like you said, there's kind of stuff that was just like all over the place. And of course, we kind of got it during this like testing phase where it wasn't even actually live yet. So, I can't comment as to if that will change over time. There was just a little bit of navigation stuff. But one of the things was, again, just like there's a lot of content and there's content being added all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to be able to keep up that pace. Obviously, when you're launching something, you either have just a ton of stuff's already on there or you're just constantly adding to it. So there was stuff just being added just all the time. And one of the things I was kind of like, is he really going to respond if I send a message? Like I see people posting up here. He's responding pretty quickly to it, despite time zone differences. I'm like, is he actually going to respond that quick if I send a message? And he responds, and it's Preet himself that is the one responding and is perfectly willing to have a conversation with you. You
yeah,
know, in your talk with him, that was one of the neat things. He's like, I'm perfectly willing to have a discussion with you. And what I typically find is people don't want to have a discussion. They just kind of want to be like, you're wrong. And he's like, well, can you give me a little something? So I actually I messaged him just a quick question and was like, I just wanted to see what happened, and he responds quickly. So I was very impressed with that. That he takes the time to respond to people's comments or questions or whatever they post on there. He'll respond to it.
that's an element that I was going to discuss also, is that two things that are, I think, really differentiating for this particular jujitsu website is that Preet is treating it like it's a community more than it is like a content um, aggregator or content distribution center. It's he's even talked about, and we contribute a little bit in the Dars thing where they're experimenting and trying to find ways to shut down and escape the Dars. Uh, he doesn't come, even though he's a seasoned black belt, he doesn't come at all of his teaching with this is the technique, you go do it. He has a sense of we're trying to find answers, and those answers are worth looking at, and we're gonna go down some blind alleys, but we're gonna find together what we're getting. And the website follows that mentality, because just like you said, he responds, and it's not, well, do this. It's his responses tend to be framed as like, well, what do we think about this? If this were the case, then what would it mean for that? And it's not like, okay, you asked, I'm just going to give you the straight answer. It's thoughtful, it's nuanced, and I really do think that he's engaging and investing in a community through defensivebjj.com more than a thing of like, this is my site, you can come view it and check out my techniques. It's like, what are we building together?
Yeah, so I thought it was kind of going along with that. It's really interesting when he's like, here's Baby Bridge version 1.0, and then there's Baby Bridge 2.0 or Hawking 1.0, Hawking 2. He's like, this is how I used to do it, and here's why we used to do it this way. Like, we thought this was the good way to do it, and then somebody came in and was shutting it down, so we had to learn a new way of doing it. My dog is.
I've had dog problems all day. I just did a podcast earlier today, and my dogs were just complete a-holes during the whole thing. It was really a pain.
He wants to assist me, and he's not being very helpful, but I appreciate it. You were terrible at defensive BJJ. So it's fascinating, and it's kind of a good and a bad thing in a way, where he gives you so much information, on the background of these moves, where it's like, if you're somebody who's like, I just want to know what that finished product is, this may not be that kind of a site for you. Where there's a lot of instructionals, or even other websites where it's just basically like, here's the moves that we're doing, and there's no necessarily big explanation of why they're doing it or how they developed it over time. It's just like, here's the finished product that we're doing.
Yeah. He puts a lot of effort into context, for sure.
And so if you're somebody who's like, I don't care about context, history, development of these things, it's potentially not going to be that interesting to you. Being somewhat, being a nerd myself, in terms of like, just in general, being a nerd of like, I want to learn, I want to know. And even in my own jiu-jitsu game, there was a lot of like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try it out and see. And that seems to be like what he did. He's like, well, I was really fascinated by this turtle position, and didn't have a lot of information on it. And he's like, I just had to sift through it, because the guy he was really so Talas was the guy he was like really basing his stuff on, and he's like, he couldn't teach it to me. And it's like, he could do it, but it was like, he's like, I don't really know what I do, I just do it. And then eventually down the road, he was like, yep, that's what I do. After kind of like, after Priit had to stumble through, I don't even know how much stuff he had to stumble through, really, to kind of stuff out. So if you're somebody who's like really, really interested in that, like the content, the development, the basically like the big thing I put as like one of my notes was, if you're interested in asking why, this is a great place to go.
Yeah. And I feel like
place to go.
I feel like Priit is very much interested in the process of learning and accelerating learning for people, and so he tries to provide that way of teaching you so that you can learn how to learn, so then you can go on into your own experimentation and find your own answers on things, as opposed to just, these are the Priit answers. I never get the sense from Priit, because he's curmudgeonly, and I don't say that like an insult. Like a lot of times innovators have a tendency to be disagreeable, because if you're going to change things, you have to disagree with them. but he rides that line really well, I think, where he is disagreeable, but he's not um, domineering about things. He's like, I disagreed with what was. I wanted to find what could be, and the sense that I get is that he wants you to find out what can be as well. It's not I
Mhm.
found out what can be, and that's the final answer.
Yeah, for sure. So he's an interesting guy for sure. One of the seminars on the site, he talks about like, um, if you could have one thing, if you could submit anyone, or if you could be unsubmittable, what would you rather be? And he's like, I'd rather be unsubmittable because eventually I'm going to win. And I thought that was a really kind of an interesting standpoint. I think that's again sort of the big thing, just the big idea behind the website in general is like going at it from a different standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's focusing on the part that's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not, you don't get to win right away. Basically, you're not winning right away. You're just not losing. And that's a very different take than what you see in maybe a lot of instructors, or at least instructionals take, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I thought this site was just really interesting from that standpoint, because I kept kind of going like, okay, sure, he's gonna do a little bit of defense, but really he's gonna like, here's my offensive system,
Yeah.
and it was, no, that's really not what he's doing. It really is like, here's how we defend against everything so far, that or what our best understanding of how to defend this is.
Yeah.
I kept just thinking like, he's gonna switch gears at some point in time, but he really doesn't. When he says it's defensive BJJ, it really is very much oriented towards your defense. And part of that concept being, I think, is ties into longevity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really good at defense, then you're probably going to be able to grapple for a long period of time. Um,
Yeah. And along with that idea is that he is trying to find like fundamental and foundational ways to be defensive that eliminate offensive options without having to stifle offense. And what I got the sense for, that's a lot of big words, and I apologize. Like that's like uh,
hey, we
I,
Kentucky would be doing that nonsense.
yeah, I had to get into the dictionary to make sure that I was saying those right. Uh, but he's trying to find postural and positional ways that take away offensive options. He's not There's not a lot of emphasis on things like grip fighting or if this then that. It's these fundamental uh, sort of positional strategies and body positioning that eliminate easy offensive options and make the person have to uh, start to overextend in order to either look for submission holds or keep you pinned. And I think there's something really really valuable in that uh, along the longevity uh, uh, standpoint, but also for a new person. If I tell you, if someone puts you in a kimura, you have to do these things, or someone puts you in an armbar, you have to do these things. Or if I say, if we keep our bodies in a certain set of positions and move through this subset of positions, say hawking or baby bridge or different ones, the potential things that your opponent can do to you is reduced. We've taken away a whole bunch of potential weapons. I think I think that you kind of supercharge that early phase of a student's learning, potentially, because that early phase is like a survival phase.
Hmm.
So if you can hand someone off a lot of these defensive postures and defensible postures in a way that is cogent and they can hold on to quickly, then suddenly you can make that first 6 months maybe a lot more enjoyable. But as we age, also, when our ability to scramble and run and chase and play starts to wane a little bit, then you can fall back on that fundamental posture, because which it shouldn't be leaving in the middle either. I'm just saying, like, in the beginning and in the end, those parts are going to be things that anybody can do, I think.
For sure. Because like it kind of stirred for me a little bit of his escapes also are so efficient. And I think back to learning kind of in the early stages of my jiu-jitsu where it was like a lot of times escapes needed to be kind of explosive or
Hmm.
quick, or almost, we call it kind of spazzy, like you're just like, get
Yeah.
off, I got to get away from this in some fashion. And he's just like, if you kind of just get into this position here, uh, you're pretty okay. Like they got to do some more things before they can really get you. So like, just get there, chill for a minute. So there's this idea of like the efficiency behind it, and also like in one of his classes, or maybe it was his private lesson that he taught, where it's like, what's the lowest form of a bridge, right? Or what is really a bridge? And it's just a curve. So the main concept behind baby bridge is just this little curve. And what that made me think of was something from kind of my own journey, where it's like, I remember my initial bridging was always like, I'm bridging through the roof. Like I'm
Yeah, me
trying to
too.
person as far as possible.
Yes.
And with like one of those things where it's like over time you realize like I don't have to bridge like that. It's just like I just got to turn a little bit, or I just got to hit just a little bit. And so there's that kind of efficiency to it. Um, and I think that's one of those things, like from my own teaching, I try to teach at a black belt level as much as possible. So giving people the most efficient way of doing something. And I think he does that from a defensive standpoint,
Yeah.
which is huge because, again, I think people tend to be maybe a little more spazzy on defense than offense, if
Uh,
that makes.
I-
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but it's like, yeah. I mean, people are just when they first start, they're kind of. I
Um,
mean, not you, of course. You were never spazzy,
how
right?
how many times did I elbow you in the face? Like, I remember once we had a discussion. I had elbowed you,
And
and you put me in a
yeah,
gift wrap, and you're like, if you elbow me again, I'm gonna
yeah,
elbow you back.
yeah. Yeah, usually it takes you in a very short period of time for me to do that. So you probably got me times in a row, and I was finally like, let's have a little quick discussion about. Uh, so I really like it, and also like I really liked his turtle stuff. I kind of focused on the bridging, the hooking, and the turtle a little bit,
Yeah.
because I actually typically used. I also I had a hard time kind of teaching it, but I actually used a lot of turtle stuff in my escapes as well.
Yeah.
That's something even in black belt level competitions I've used turtle as a way to escape, even in even in like an IBJJF setting, or it's like the guy could not he couldn't climb on my back,
Hmm.
so I didn't have to worry. Like I was like, he's not getting these points, right? Um, but it was like, because I can remember a lot of times people are like, turtle, what are you going to do with turtle? You know, and he kind of does that too, where he's like, people look at turtle as being like, this is not a good position to ever go to. Um, but it's a foundational or fundamental position in other styles. Like in wrestling, I mean, the referee's position is very, very similar to a turtle position that he teaches. Again, the rule set and the goals are different, so you're going to see differences between those two things, but it's a
Yeah.
foundational position. And so he's just like, here's a foundational position. People aren't taking advantage of it. Maybe you should take advantage of it.
Well, that flows with something that he has said in a couple of his seminars, where he's talking about the turtle, and for some reason in jujitsu, it's kind of frowned upon to just stand up out of turtle. And he's like, in wrestling, that's what they're just trying to do.
Uh
And he
huh.
goes, so why wouldn't we do that? Like, what is wrong with standing up? And the turtle, because of the the base that you have, it's not easy to stand up if someone's pressuring you, but it's certainly easier than trying to just get up off your back. So there's a case to be made for that. And wrestling, the referee position, is if you think of that as like driving innovation and standing up out of turtle. Um, it's kind of interesting, and this came from the interview that I had with Preet, where he said it's surprising that the IBJJF isn't an innovation lab for the turtle position, because if someone starts to pass your guard and you go to turtle, they don't score. They have to do something else to score. So he was kind of saying that he was surprised that there hasn't been more of a like a time spent trying to figure that position out and really make something from it, because it provides another guard retention option.
And especially because you look at, it's only been very recently, I mean, very recently, that IBJJF started including heel hooks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at like a lot of things from turtle that you can do. You do a little bit of movement, you can roll through, you can kind of do some inversion stuff. Like there's a lot of things that you could do, especially given the rule set of IBJJF, that maybe you wouldn't do in another rule set, because you might be rolling through and you're just leaving a leg hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in IBJJF, it was like, well, leave your leg out there. They can't tear it off. So,
Yeah,
gotta put it there,
that's an
you
interesting
know?
thought. And
Uh,
there's a lot of very powerful leg attack entries from inversions.
mhm.
So I think that the turtle, going through turtle and inverting out of turtle can also, play into a leg locker style as well, not just a stand up and wrestle guy.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's a lot more entries than just the old school, like reach between your legs and roll through and try to knee bar them. Like that worked great when people weren't really savvy towards legs.
Yeah.
People are a little savvier towards legs now, but that doesn't mean that you can't, in some fashion, invert from turtle and still attack the legs. Just provide some alternative options. Um, so it's just that kind of. Um, I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, because that may not be everybody's style, but
Right.
that was kind of a neat thing where he's like, with some of the escapes, like some of the escapes from side control that he goes over, where he's like, right here, you could simply invert right here. If you have an inversion style game, you can basically stop your movement right here and then invert. He's like, if you don't have an inversion style game, you do this instead. You can continue moving around and turn it into a different style of escape or counterattack or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I like that. Again, he's not just like this is the concrete way, this is the only answer. It's like, no, this is all we learned more. Um,
Yeah, I admire that, especially in someone who is traveling the world doing
Still there?
seminars. And yeah, I'm here. I think yours might be cutting a little bit. I'll give you a second. All right. For those with me, Michael is frozen. He'll be back. There he is.
There we go. I don't know if that was mine or yours. Probably mine, but
Yeah, it was you. The internet was tired of you beating up on me all the time, and you know I can't really get reasonable revenge yet. Your time in the coming, my friend, but it hasn't come yet.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but sure. Anyways.
Whatever, you know. But what you were saying is that kind of going back to that idea of Preet is teaching from the standpoint of a student. He's trying to find answers, and then in a way, trying to bring those who want to come along with him, on the journey. And that's a very different standpoint than I think you'll find on really just about any other jujitsu website, maybe learning website in general. And so I think the another thing, like we were saying, the community element. I've watched a couple of the role narrations that he does, where people will send in their roles or competitions, and he'll just discuss what he's thinking about, and try to give them ideas. And he's doing that almost daily. Like that's a thing. He's not. If there's anything you can say about Preet, he's not phoning it in. Like he's engaged, and I think that's an exciting element that I didn't get. I didn't um, engage in because I didn't want to really kind of jump on that because I only had a month, and we were there to review it. I didn't want to just take advantage of it, I guess. But
Hmm.
I think that's a great element of that website too. That it would be easy to gloss over, but to get his perspective on like your fundamental movement and things like that, and decision making, I think is a very very valuable thing, and probably not something
Hmm.
you're getting out of a lot of sites for the price that he's asking.
Right. And I like that he compares fundamental movements in jujitsu to fundamental things in other martial arts. Like he references boxing a lot,
Hmm.
uh, kind of throughout video. I mean, just all over the place. He references boxing, and particularly when he does seminars. He's got a lot of his seminars on the website, which is pretty awesome. You know, there's not a lot of people who'll just be like, here's like every one of my seminars that I've ever done, and he's perfectly fine doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but he compares them. And that's something I've kind of found in my own teaching experience is like if you know somebody has a background in another style, in particular striking art, and you can start to draw those parallels between them, like their learning curve is just
Sure.
it just shoots there. Whereas if you have somebody like they don't have a reference for anything, it can be a little bit harder at times because they're just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything to compare this to. And so he tries to reference it to something that at times, maybe even if you don't have a striking background, you can still understand what a jab and a cross are. Very
Right.
quickly, you can understand what a jab and a cross are, you know. And so it's like, here's fundamental things in this style. This is our equivalent of those fundamental things. And you can do a bunch of different things with just those fundamental movements. So I really like that he did that because he's able to do these seminars at places where um, he's talking to people who maybe English isn't even their, maybe it's their second language, if it's their second language,
Hmm.
um, and like he travels all over the place. For people who aren't familiar, he was big on the BJJ Globetrotters and stuff, and so he traveled to all these different countries, and he's having to convey information to people in different languages. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons that he's so good at explaining stuff is that he has to find ways of like, how do I convey this information, maybe even through a translator, so that these people can understand it.
Yeah.
And that, that's maybe that's not something a lot of people have experience with, um, is like they traveled to a different country and tried to teach something entirely new through someone else. You know.
That would be a huge challenge, I think, to try and put that together. Like if you were just to sit down and say, okay, I'm gonna, like if we were gonna go to Estonia, and teach a seminar to those guys, at Preet school, there would be a lot of considerations that we would have to make for language. And I think you're dead on that he tries to find sort of universal analogies, like things that can cross the linguistic barrier, because just about any human being can figure out like a jab cross. It's not the complexity of the gross movement is very low. The complexity of the fine movement is very high. That's why it keeps working, at Olympic and world championship level.
Right, and how even he even discusses like if those things weren't effective, they'd be gone. You know, if these types of movements were not effective, they'd be gone. And I think that's like he kind of discusses that with like using turtle and MMA as well as jujitsu. It's like if it wasn't effective, people wouldn't continue to do it. I mean, it's that simple. If these escapes and things were not effective, they wouldn't be doing them. But they're doing them kind of cross disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the turtle position in some fashion takes place in wrestling. It takes place in jiu-jitsu. It takes place in MMA. Like it's crossing these different styles as an effective thing. One of the places you would see turtle a lot was actually judo,
Yeah, absolutely.
because you could just turtle up and wait, and then you're stood back up and you start back over again. So you only had to maintain that shell for a small period of time before you're stood back up. So if that wasn't effective, people wouldn't have been doing it, right? And I think that's something that Preet discusses kind of a lot through just different positions or escapes or whatever it is he's just like, if it wasn't effective, people wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he also one thing that in terms of like insights from Preet, from the interview that I did with him, he was saying that uh, good defense makes good offense, uh, and he was talking about another boxing analogy of like the using the Philly shell to hide behind your shoulder. He's like that makes the jab more difficult, but people don't stop jabbing; they just get better at jabbing, and so I really like that idea. And once again, just kind of carry over from boxing. The jab is. I don't know enough about boxing to say definitively, but I don't think that there's too many people who would argue that the jab is the most fundamental, movement of boxing as far as punches go, because everything kind of springs from it. And yet, defenses work to shut it down. Eventually, like the jab still works. It's just that you just have to do it righter than the person who is defending rightly.
I would definitely say, depending on the style, that's true. I would just say potentially that the peekaboo style is a little bit of an exception for that, where kind of your
Nah,
hooks and up.
that's not real.
It is real. We're gonna see it again here real soon, actually. Uh, um, but yeah, I really do enjoy, like basically he talks about the scientific method a lot,
Hmm.
where everything that he's doing, he kind of puts it through that scientific method. It's like, does this kind of smell good? Does this look good? Okay, let's test it out, see what happens. Now let me test it out against other people. Let me test it out against better people. What are my results? Are my results kind of the same across the board, or is it like, this works if I'm just better than the person? And he really seems to try to take those elements out of like, this works if you're just better than the person. He's like, I'm
Right.
not interested in that. I want this to work no matter what.
Hmm.
Which I'm a huge advocate of, and I really appreciate that he focuses on that, where it's like, this is not attribute based, this is principle based, and then you can still put your own flair into it.
Yeah.
Like, what you want to focus on afterwards, or which aspect of this do you want to focus on?
Yeah. I definitely feel the same way just about preach teaching in general. It's really fun. He's one of those people that kind of invites you down a rabbit hole, and then like uh, you can engage in it or not engage in it. But I'll check it out. Are we playing with toys here?
Yep. Yeah. He evidently wanted my attention enough. He put it up on the desk for me to get for him. So yeah, so, yeah, he's a little attention hungry right now. I guess he's a little
Yep.
bored. He's a little bored with the Prince of BJJ.
Well, we
Um,
can we can wrap it up pretty soon. I think we've covered a lot of the elements that I wanted to cover. Um, the the From my deep dive into the baby bridge, a couple of things that I made sense of that I was doing sort of intuitively, but not didn't know that I was doing them or didn't have a like an understanding of what they were doing for me. Uh, is he uses the baby bridge to make hip heisting space when there shouldn't be hip heisting space. And I was kind of doing the same thing by kind of coming up on my shoulder and elevating my hip. And the baby bridge actually is more efficient at that than what I was doing. And so it cleaned up a small movement that I use. And so I've been playing with it in bottom half guard because trying to effectively wrestle into the single leg from half guard, like with the underhook. Um, a lot of times I was making somewhat large movements, and those large movements were causing a little bit of exposure for me to the person on top. Whereas with the baby bridge, I'm getting the same result with a little bit less, or sometimes a lot less energy, but also lower risk and lower exposure because I'm not having to come up as much. I'm just creating enough room for my hip to turn, and then I'm in that wrestling position and sort of in that dogfight. So I'm kind of excited to uh, just like you said, like the in terms of the efficiency and like it's not attribute based to further attribute proof if I could my half guard a little bit and definitely my side control turns like underhook turns from side control escapes as well. So I'm hopeful that I can implement that. I'm already practicing it and just try to make it muscle memory so that I can use it because I have seen some difference in it already.
And that's really fun because I've been kind of using baby bridging and hawking to really set up my pendulum style escapes or penduluming into inversion escapes, and which is wild amounts of success. Whereas like there's times like I would use a pendulum escape or teach a pendulum escape, but it didn't necessarily feel that smooth to me. It always felt like I had to kind of force it a little bit. And it got smooth just by sheer repetition, but it was never something where I was like, I'm going to go to this as like a primary means of escaping. And it's been really fun to play with this kind of baby bridging and hawking stuff. And it's like I'm just like grip fighting down low, and I'm just boom, and I'm right around. And suddenly I went from this defense to this uh, massive advantage in my attacking because I'm suddenly like up on their shoulder, partially up on their back, or I'm all set at an angle to them. They're like, you know, it happens so quickly they can't really process what's happening. But it's also not a huge cost to me. Like I'm not having to try to move quickly. The position is enabling that movement to happen very, very easily.
You bring something up there. I had that same sensation. Sometimes putting some of those things together, it doesn't feel like you're moving much, but it's almost like a mouse moving into the wall. It's like it's just enough and it's really easy. Like for the mouse, that's an easy little crack to get into, but for the rest of us, it's not. And it's almost like you're just training your body to find these smaller spaces and be able to occupy them as opposed to this big space that is more natural to try and occupy when you're in the bottom.
And along those same lines, I think it allows you to be more relaxed. Because I found that I know for myself, I would be very tense when I had pendulum in the past. And now it's like my pendulum is so relaxed, and that's part of what's enabling those whipping movements to happen so much faster. So basically, the entries to an attack on the backside is now faster and smoother and less energy for me because I'm more relaxed on the front end of it.
So when you say pendulum, just so I understand, you're not talking about like the pendulum sweep from guard. You're just talking about swinging your legs
And
to
swing
generate
your
momentum.
generate momentum,
Yeah, yeah.
and you can invert or spin around and come back into a guard style position. And it comes like I do it a ton from hawking. Just like in that hawking position, I kind of pin. It's just like boom, and I'm around. I was like, wait, oh, that did work. He wasn't kidding. Like when he said that works this way, like it actually does work that way. Because, like I said, a pendulum is something I know, I teach, I do, but it never really was like a primary thing on my list of things to do. Even though it's really an efficient movement, right? You're just taking advantage of momentum, like with the pendulum. That's the concept is take advantage of that momentum. And in the past, I felt like I had to force or jumpstart momentum. In this case, it's like the momentum is just there based on the position. The position
Yeah,
gives momentum, right? Or that kind of potential energy to then generate the movement. So I was really enjoying playing with it because I kind of did a similar thing to you. I was like, I'm going to kind of pick a spot and go from there, because there was just too much content to cover in a month.
yeah,
So I definitely think like for the price that he's asking, like you're going to get your money's worth if you're if you're joining that site.
yeah.
And
I would agree with that too, especially if you are defensive minded, or to if you want to play that defensive game and add it to your offensive game. Like maybe you're not defensive minded, but you'd like to add that. I think it's a tremendous value. I definitely feel that way.
For sure, because you're going to get your money's worth, for sure in a month, and then probably in 2 months, and probably three. I don't know how long it would take me to get through that entire site, but it's definitely more than a month. If you're really wanting to get through the content in a digestible fashion, like you could probably get through it faster if you're just kind of breezing through it, not trying to absorb anything or trying to apply it to your game. But if you're really interested in doing a deep dive, this is definitely a deep dive site.
Yeah,
If you're not interested in a deep dive, it's not going to be for you. But if you want to really delve into it, definitely check it out. It's well worth the time.
yeah. I think for me, as I went through it, I'm not sure, given like what their brand decisions are, whether they're going to start to add offensive things to to deal with the defensive postures that he's working with and trying to teach. And I don't think that matters that much. I think that his contention is that we may work that out on our own. That good offense comes from good working against good defense. Um, but the even without that, if you never put that in there, I think that there's tremendous value, especially. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Uh-oh.
Having been at
Did I lose you
jujitsu,
again?
oh no, sorry, I've got you on audio, but the video is kind of crummy. We'll give it a minute. Michael's internet is playing internet games. I think this is happening every time I talk.
I'm back.
I think your internet is not the problem. I think
You
you're just stopping me from talking is what it is.
do. I mean, that's normal. My computer just is just doing it for me. But anyways, I feel like this is a very very quality site. Again, especially if you're interested in defense at all, it it's worth at least checking out for a short term.
Yeah, I think that if you, especially if you engage in the community aspect of it, it's going to be something that you're probably going to be with for a long, long time. Because the he's using the community as a way of driving, the innovations that he's trying to find on his own. And that's a fascinating. I don't know of anyone else who's doing anything like that. I could be wrong on that, but that's a new thing, in my opinion, and honestly, a pretty exciting thing.
I haven't seen it as much, necessarily in the jiu-jitsu standpoint. I've seen it in a few fitness places, a few fitness groups do some similar things in terms of that community and like posting and responding to it. But this is definitely pretty unique in that regards because, like you said, his well, he responds to messages so quickly, but then he's also like he's doing those he calls it like narrating live roles. He does those so frequently, like he's on those right away, and so that's a huge thing.
Yeah,
That alone could its own that you could say argue that could be its own website.
yeah, no,
Just
absolutely.
just having a messenger or narrating a live role, that could be its own website.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
it's definitely a thing of value. So if you engage in that even one time every 3 months, you're going to get so much out of just that. Because if you like his perspective, you're getting it directly on your rolling. Like it's not just like this is what you should do. It's
from
literally.
from him. It's not somebody else doing it, and then they're just saying this actually Priit. It's him. It's his voice narrating over it. So you because kind of narrating voices that like who's actually saying this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's actually him, which is pretty awesome. That he takes that much time and puts that much energy into this site. Again, especially for the price of it. Like he could probably ask for a good bit more than what he is asking.
Yeah.
Especially given those services, given that ability to message and get a response back very, very, like I said, very quickly, because I don't know exactly what our time difference is between here and there, but it was like typically there was no more than 2 to 3 hours before there was a response
Yeah.
from Priit when I would message the site. So you know that kind of like he's always got his hands in it. He's always doing something with it. So that you're getting a really good deal because you're kind of constantly getting interactions with Priit. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel that from other sites that I've seen. Other sites is more like somebody just kind of recording it and being like, oh yeah, here's what they taught today.
Yeah. And that can be great content, but this is a different.
It's a different
I
type.
it is a different type of service and product that's being provided, and I think he's adding a whole lot of value just with that. Like if you created the site and it was just the techniques, quite frankly, that would be worth the 15 a month, and maybe a lot more. But the community aspect is something that I think is an extreme increase in the value that you're getting out of it. If you engage in that at all, even just watching from the sidelines other people's narrated roles, I was learning things. Like I was not providing my own roles, but was learning things from theirs. That's an extremely valuable thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
my rating, the Purple Belt review is I'm giving it 4.5 stars out of 5. The half star is only for navigation, and that's because it took me some time. The site, everything is provided and linked and put into categories and things, but it takes a while to understand, or at least it took me a while. I might be just like a dumbass, but it took me a little bit of while to understand the logic of the organization of the site, and so I didn't feel that was tremendously intuitive. That said, everything that I stumbled across along my way of trying to figure it out was valuable, so it wasn't like it hurt my feelings to not be getting exactly what I thought I was looking for.
Yeah, that was kind of my biggest, was just again, navigation wasn't just like super smooth and super intuitive. And then again, you could argue that he doesn't need to go so much into the background. He doesn't need to say like, here's version 1.0. You could argue that. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. I mean, I found it incredibly fascinating. Not everybody's going to find it that fascinating. So, because some people are going to be like, why did you waste my time with this video? Like, why did you waste my time? You don't even do this anymore. Why are you telling me this? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you could make that argument for sure. Um, but me personally, I really enjoyed that aspect of it where he's showing like I am human, I can make mistakes, I can learn, I can improve. Not I'm the ultimate instructor, I'm infallible. Um, so the only knocks I would potentially take off was a little bit of navigation stuff, and again that could potentially be improving over time because
Sure.
they're
Yeah.
constant stuff to the site. Our time on the site, it was a little bit of navigation issues, and then like I said, you could I could see somebody very easily saying like he didn't need to have 6 videos under this one. He could have just had the one that told me the end product.
Yeah,
So,
I could get that criticism as well, but I think that almost goes against Preet's philosophy of this is a process and we're working this out together as a unit, not I'm here to deliver this information.
Which I definitely agree with. That's definitely not his philosophy. Just kind of trying to offer a little perspective for
Oh
people
yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah, and I'm not playing devil's advocate against you either.
We're given just a little review of it, so again, just to be kind of forward to people and let them know, like, you're gonna get all this content, and it's not just like here's the technique video done. There's a lot that goes behind it. So um, I truly think you know it's such a unique site. It's worth doing for at least a few months. I
Yeah,
mean, if nothing else, give it 3 months. I would honestly say give it 6 months to a year. Because if he continues to upload at the pace that he was uploading while we were on it, it's going to take you that long to really get through it, digest it, apply it, tweak it to your style. It's going to take you time to do it. So I personally would suggest uh, checking it out, giving it a test, give it 3 to 6 months and see. And if it doesn't change, like, it's going to change your game. Like,
yeah, we
I
both
don't.
like just from this discussion, it's clear that we both got some benefit without a whole lot of drilling time and practice time that we were able to put directly into our game. So
And
that is also a
that's
testament.
1 month.
Right, right.
We only got 30 days with it, and we were already taking it and applying it to what we're doing. So, if you give 3 months, give it 6 months, you're definitely going to be taking stuff from it and applying it to your game, and it's going to make you better. And I personally don't think it's going to matter what level you're at. You know, I mean, I've been grappling a pretty long time at this point and had a lot of hours on the mat, and I was still getting benefit from that content.
Yeah, and I could see someone who's new getting a whole bunch out of it, especially like the context that he provides. Like when you're new, that's so valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think we can wrap it up. I'm gonna stick with my 4.5 stars. What's your star value, Michael?
It's definitely four. I would say it's maybe like 4.25.
You're the
Um,
curmudgeon here.
I am. I'm only taking off just that smidgen extra just for the people out there who are going to be like, I don't want all this extra stuff. Honestly, I think it's excellent. I really do think it's a 4.5 out of 5. And again, the navigation is my biggest knock on it. Just at the time, again, at the time frame snapshot that we looked at, that was the biggest issue.
Yeah, I think that they're improving that and probably getting feedback on it, but you know, uh, we can't review that, so we'll just trust that our weighty opinions are such that they're gonna listen to it and take our advice. With all that said, Michael, once again, I can't thank you enough for your time. It was really exciting. I was really excited to get your perspective on something that the two of us were looking at the same time, and sort of get an idea of where I'm at in terms of like what can I pick up as opposed to what can someone with your experience and depth of knowledge pick up. So this has been really fun, just from almost an experiment between the two of us. I feel like I learned a whole lot more than you did, and that I'm a lot better than you are at learning stuff. So give us just a little bit of time, and I'm coming for you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I found what I really like to see is that we can both take a similar principle or similar position and then apply it to our own games in slightly different fashions.
Yeah.
I think that just attests to what Preet's doing. Again, like, your style is a little different than my style, but we could take that same principle and and apply it just slightly differently.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for your time and your insight. I'm really excited that we had the opportunity to do this. I want to thank Preet and the everybody that's involved with defensivebjj.com. It was great fun to be a part of that community for the time that we were, and we'll post this up and let them, see it and then argue with us and tell us what a-holes we are for not giving it 5 stars. But uh, I think it's a great place. I do recommend it. And that's all I got. You got anything left?
Nope, that's it.
All righty. Stand by.